What's up, mother puckers? It's Silent Signs from I Dream of Indie, and today we are taking a look at Bush Hockey League for the Nintendo Switch.
To Erickson, Petit. Oh, stop! Scores! Now that was a good goal. He caught the goalie guessing. The Charlestown Stonemasons are getting a good lead.
Bush Hockey League is an old-school inspired arcade-style hockey game that was originally released as old-time hockey on PC and the PS4 back in 2017. It is finally now making its way to the Nintendo Switch after being rebranded as Bush Hockey League, and I knew I had to take on this title when I first heard about it, mostly because I spent a good portion of my childhood in a hockey rink. My brother was a hockey player, and he played for one of those traveling teams where the kids would essentially travel across the state and be at a different rink every weekend, and sometimes multiple rinks in a single weekend. So I spent a fair amount of time absolutely loathing the sport. But as I got older, I was able to set those feelings aside, or at least kind of bottle them up deep within myself to be released eventually when I have a nervous breakdown. But that's aside from the point. I always did enjoy the more arcadey, goofy hockey games that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. And immediately upon booting up Bush Hockey League, you can very clearly see the inspiration from those earlier titles, as well as from movies like Slapshot. This title has two modes of gameplay: exhibition game and story mode. Exhibition game is a one-off event where you can either play a single player or local multiplayer match. Story mode can be played as single or multiplayer as well. As far as controls go, you have two different control schemes to choose from: the retro, which plays like a true arcade style hockey game, and the advanced, that is a little bit more in depth, as the name would imply. You also have different skill levels you can choose from, with rookie being the easiest and veteran being the most difficult. Again, pretty self-explanatory, but worth mentioning. And from there, it's exactly what you would expect of an over-the-top arcade-style hockey game. You're going to be playing 5 versus 5 matches. There are going to be fights breaking out at any given moment. You are given, I guess, what you would call a tutorial at the beginning of your gameplay, but they don't let you try anything out. You're kind of just reading through a number of cards on screen, and ultimately I didn't retain any of that until it was time to actually implement it in my gameplay. So this was a true trial by fire experience for me, and maybe why I ended up preferring the retro controls more than the advanced controls. I'm sure it can be mastered with a good bit of practice with this title, but I'm not playing this game for mastery, I'm playing for the fights. Come on. In story mode, you're also given a number of objectives for a particular match. For example, you may be tasked with taking out a certain player on the ice or completing a certain number of passes. You won't necessarily need to win the game each time, but you will want to complete as many of those objectives as possible. So, what works and what doesn't work here? First of all, I do have to point out that the load times on the Nintendo Switch are atrocious. I know I don't expect them to be as fast as my PC, but there are a few instances where I straight up thought this game had crashed and I had to reset it, only to find out that no, it was really still loading. If it weren't for the music, I would have reset the system. The next item worth touching on here is the controls themselves. The developers did note that this version of the game has tighter controls and timing, faster animations, and tweaks made to the core gameplay design to make for a more enjoyable time out there on the ice. And yeah, I thought the controls worked well for the most part. The biggest issue I had with controls was with the fighting. I guess I just wanted it to play kind of like a brawler, and it definitely does not, so that might be user error, but it wasn't quite as satisfying as I hoped it would be. Again, I preferred the retro controls here just for kind of ease of use, though if you do prefer a more advanced experience, you have that option as well. I thought the actual core gameplay mechanics worked really well in this title. It was a fun hockey game to play. The matches are nice and quick, so they're not a huge time time investment. You have some settings you can flip on or off, like icing and offsides, and it's definitely super fun as a multiplayer game. Visually, Bush Hockey League went for a retro look, but not in the retro sense that I'm traditionally used to talking about. No, these graphics aren't going to blow your mind, but it emulates those PS2 era hockey game graphics pretty well. They're blocky and kind of clunky looking, but I think that's intentional. I do wish that in the story mode they told the story in more than just static images and text, because honestly it didn't make it super interesting or enthralling to read, but it's kind of silly anyway and ultimately just thrown in there for some additional amusement. And speaking of amusement, sound design certainly did not disappoint. You get a really diverse catalog of tracks to back your crazy hockey antics. The song selections here span decades. There's no great way to summarize what this soundtrack includes other than a complete and total potpourri of drunken debauchery, and that suits this title perfectly. Sound effects and voice acting are also really effective here. They are not too invasive and they make plenty of room for all of the antics going on in game. Assuming that you know full well that you're not signing up for a realistic hockey game here, there is plenty of fun to be had with Bush Hockey League. It is over the top, kind of raunchy, arcade style hockey at its finest. The controls do seem effective. You have that option to toggle between the retro and advanced controls, though I would have still appreciated more of a tutorial to actually teach me how to use both of the control styles. Perhaps more than just the text on screen would have been helpful. But all things considered, this is probably a hockey rink that I would actually return to. It's clunky and it's goofy, but damn it, it has heart.
They get rid of the laundry and get down to business. Lockhead with a solid left. Lockhead with a solid right. Lockhead goes right and connects. That will do it. The crowd is unhappy to see this one going this way, as he took a couple of bad punches in this tilt.
So will you be putting it all out there on the ice with Bush Hockey League? Let me know in the comments down below. Before I go, I just want to thank our indie warriors, Bill T, Christian Cruz, Kevilo, Adriana Amato, CJR, PSC, Julian Kolbus, Jesse Raylin, Marky Mint, Dave Harp, Peekaboo, Lex Noyle, Carmen Red, King of the Hatch, and indie legends, Jen Rose Larkison, Mitchell Hall, Eric Peach, Skepticism, C Coyle, Nathan Moore, Chris Jackson, Mr. W, Blue Francis 14. Thank you all so much for your support. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't already, don't forget you can subscribe down below so you don't miss any of our reviews and gameplay impressions, and check out the description box if you'd like to see how to become an indie warrior or indie legend yourself. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.